I knew of underground comic art, but the town I lived in, underground comics weren't that accessible. You know, it was like this boring suburban town. But I would see, and I think somebody like once surreptitiously brought some Zap comics into my high school, and I opened it up to some Escalade Wilson pages, which I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but it's really gratuitous. It's just an explosion of sex and violence, and was horrified. I was fascinated, but also horrified. But I used to see on T-shirts and posters and on record covers, I used to see work by Gilbert Shelton, who did the Freak Brothers, but also Robert Crumb. And I loved all of Robert Crumb's artwork. It wasn't until I was going to art school in the late 70s in New York City that I saw one of Robert Crumb's actual comic books. And by that I meant a comic book where he wrote and drew everything from cover to cover. The whole comic book had, you know, it was my first real exposure to an underground comic, and it was something that was by him. And when I saw that this one guy just did everything, wrote and drew everything from cover to cover, I immediately knew then what I wanted to do.
Well, I was brought up with a generation that was sort of exposed to Mad Magazine, and Mad Magazine in particular was largely responsible for indoctrinating an entire generation into the comics as a medium for, you know, social discourse. And I think it was the first time any adults ever told me the truth. Essentially, it was, don't believe the media. We are the media. Don't believe us either, you know. And as ironic as that statement was, I think it was, it sort of engendered a sense of trust with these misfits that put together Mad Magazine, and again, it sort of poisoned the minds of a lot of impressionable youth, me among them.
I mean, like, really, it's like really bad anime, like not like good stories, and you know, they really draw it out. But I watched a lot of like cartoons, anything on TV. I didn't really read comics when I was younger, except for maybe Calvin and Hobbes or whatever's in the Sunday Funnies. But I got really interested in making comics when I read American Elf by James Kochalka, which is, he's the guy who kind of started this like 4 panels a day thing, so it was really easy to get into. You don't have to worry about like your story or your like script, really. It's just making comics, purely for making comics.
People don't really use that term underground anymore, because underground also implied, correctly, that it also was illegal or quasi-legal. Its right to exist was still questionable, and that people were arrested for buying, selling, distributing underground comics, and they were banned, and they still can be banned, because mainly because of the sexual content, or the casual drug use. But they've since inspired what people more are likely to call independent or alternative comics, and alternative comics or independent comics it's a catch-all phrase that is pretty much everything that is not explicitly genre fiction. It's not superheroes, it's not action adventure, it's not, well, they don't have these genres really anymore, but it's like not a romance comic or
Like a horror comic.
or yes, it's more the artist is using the comic as a form of self-expression. It's comics as fine art as opposed to commercial art. So it's basically it's an artist who's doing exactly what he or she wants to do and say just what they want to say and doing it totally on their own terms without it being dictated to them. That's not work for hire. That the whole impetus of making this comic comes from themselves. And then they either self-publish or find someone who's willing to publish it. But the whole idea is they're just trying to express themselves in comic form.
Superhero and that kind of stuff, it's like a factory, like assembly line, So there's like a writer, and then there's a penciler and inker. And I don't understand how, like, so many people, I don't feel like they're trying to do the same thing. They're just like, they're just a cog in the machine. And they can't possibly be working together to make something they love. And with like the indie stuff, it's like one person, one creative endeavor, and I think it just like stays more simple and true to the vision.
Yeah, you could always get closer to the camera if you want my eyes to be more in that direction.
Thanks. Let me sit in your studio chair.
Sure.
We're rolling. Peter Bag, take one. Yeah. So.
High tech.